Please tell us a bit about the situation of gender identity politics in your country.
Yep, thank you, Jo. Okay, so before I start, I just want to preface by saying when I refer to the Liberal in Australia, that actually means Conservative right-wing party here. So, and also instead of saying births, deaths and marriages, registration, amendment legislation, I'm going to say self-ID. Okay. So there's really not much else that I can say or add to Kath's presentation on this panel a few weeks back regarding the situation of gender identity politics in Australia. She did a marvellous job of canvassing it. And you can access her on the video via the WHRC YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. Is there an ongoing discussion similar to the Gender Recognition Act reform in Australia? In short, the answer is no, but there certainly needs to be. And I think there are a few reasons for why there is no ongoing robust discussion here in Australia at the minute. So it's mainly because we have federal and state and territory governments. And because of that, we have witnessed the gradual rollout of self-ID legislation per state and territory in a staggered manner. So awareness of this reform here in Australia tends to be discussed publicly only when it impacts that particular state or territory. And, you know, largely because we're unaware it's even going to occur. So in the states and territories where the reforms have passed, there's not really any ongoing discussion happening, perhaps maybe because it might seem pointless, I'm not sure. That's not my personal view. But the other issue I can see is that also we only have the one journalist that is consistently reporting on all matters to do with gender identity politics and relevant reforms in a newspaper that is centre-right, discussing a matter that is firmly wedged in left-wing politics. And despite the fact that his work is ethical, sound and well presented, you know, many are very quick to dismiss instead of discuss his findings. And here, you know, we've got many more journalists and publications supporting gender ideology and self-ID, which is a segue into what I see as a further contributing factor, and that is purity politics. So, you know, in a country where we are not only separated by vastness, and we have politically distinct states and territories, as well as overwhelmingly disparate Indigenous communities, I personally think we can ill afford to squander any more time worrying over political purity when it comes to gender ideology for everyone. And I see this as a crucial element that stymies ongoing discussion and to our detriment. You know, women don't just exist on the political left, they exist on the right. I've seen them. But this isn't a call to throw women under the bus or to be blind to unacceptable views, i.e. maps. I just simply believe that Australia as a whole needs to engage in an ongoing discussion similar to the Gender Recognition Act reform yesterday.
Well, in Norway, the Norwegian Parliament passed the law on change of legal gender in 2016, and this was the same year as the National Organization of Lesbian and Homosexuals in Norway changed their name to FREE, the Association of Gender and Sexual Diversity. Also, the Department of Equality was renamed Department of Sexual and Gender Diversity. Legal gender is defined as the gender a person is registered with in the National Registry. So the law enables citizens from 6 years to change their legal gender by sending in an application to the Department of Taxes. And there is no need to document any ambition to live as the desired gender or verification from medical or psychiatric institutions that the person have gender dysphoria or gender incongruence, as they call it. As sex until now have been registered into the National Registry at birth by the doctors in charge of midwifery, the department at hospitals. They have done it until now, but now self-declaration marks a sharp shift in how sex is defined in the National Registry, from being defined by objective reasoning to being defined by subjective experiences. This seems like an extraordinary regressive move, as subjective experiences has not been explicitly deciding factor or variable in legal frameworks since modernity, when religion began to be removed. So there has been no consequential analysis or risks assessment to the shift in how sex is defined, and there has been no assessment on the impact that this shift will have on women's existing rights. And the Police Academy, which produce the reports on crime in Norway, were contacted by a truth-seeking and very angry feminist in order to verify that the sharp increase in women charged with rape, which rose from 12 to 41 in the year after the introduction of self-identification, were not due to an increase in male crime being registered as female crimes. The head of statistics verified that there did not exist any technical way to verify a person's sex than through the national registry. This means that the National Registry in Norway doesn't have a meaningful way to keep statistics on sex as a variable, as it is not possible to find out what this variable refers to. Rape is a sex crime in the literal sense, as it is performed with or on sex organs. That the statistics on this crime cannot differentiate between sex and a subjective experience of gender is in breach with the UNCEDAW, which states that states must take care to include women in statistics.
Hi to you all. In Italy, the struggle of gender identity is much less harsh and organized than in Anglo-Saxon countries, and in particular in UK. It is an imitative phenomenon, quite foreign to our culture, and later I will tell you something about this. We feminists were the first years ago to have news of what was happening in UK, of GRA reform project, the No Platform, the Tavistock Clinic, everything you know. And it was very difficult to explain to other women because here things were not at this point. But as from women, we have suffered the same attacks and the same violence that you know. The most affected were lesbians. Only recently, a draft of law has been formulated, a draft which is very similar to the draft reform of GRA, but at the moment the proposal has not been filed in Parliament. It has remained a dead letter and has had no follow-up. Then there was the lockdown and everything stopped. I have to add that a part of Italian feminism, the liberal feminism, which in Italy is called transfeminism, non una di meno is the name, supports gender identity politics and queer movement. The most worrying thing is that non una di meno is the most popular feminism among young women. Its main fronts are the trans identity, the recognition of prostitution as work and its regularization, the transhumanist manipulation of bodies, the right of surrogacy. In these lockdown times, the voice of Non Una Di Meno rose only in defense of the right to an income for sex workers who were left without customers. Instead, we radicals are reflecting on the change of civilization made necessary by the pandemic. The feminism of Non Una Di Meno is not separatist. Many men take a part in it, and in particular, many gays who use the movement for their goals. Fortunately, we have a feeling that liberal feminism is now losing consent.
Here, the gender identity policies are still incipient. Like it hasn't, like the debate, the social debate has just started, but there are two meaningful things that have happened. At the end of last year, a gender identity law was passed where transgender people can change their legal name and sex. The only requirement is being over 14 years old. If the person is a minor, she needs a psychological report that indicates that her identity doesn't align with her sex. But if you're of legal age, you only need 2 witnesses that will testify that you are transgender. Currently, the LGBTQ community is demanding that there be no age restriction for this. And then furthermore, March 2nd of last year, the Gabriela law was passed, which is named after 17-year-old Gabriela Alcaíno and her mother, Carolina Donoso, who were killed by the former ex-boyfriend. Through this new legislation, the scope of the crime of femicide is extended to include murders perpetrated by men who are partners or ex-partners of their victims, but who do not live with them. Whereas before, it only applied to those who were living together. In general terms, this law is a step towards the end of impunity for violence against women who do not live with their abusers. However, the gender criminalization of femicide is also considered when the murder occurs in the circumstances in which the motive is related to the sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression of the victim. So essentially, if a trans-identified male is killed by the partner, it would also be classified as a femicide and be counted like that in the statistics.
Gender politics in France, about the legislation. In French laws, gender identity replaced sexual identity in 2012 in all legislative provisions that are using the expression sexual orientation. To change sex in the civil status, the procedure has been simplified in 2017. From now on, the applicants will no longer have to prove that they have undergone or that they are planning to undergo sexual medical treatment, but the request is made to the court. Gender identity and medically assisted procreation is rather a new question. The French National Assembly rejected last September the access to medically assisted procreation to transgender people. It is only allowed now to women. It's interesting to know that the rejected amendment claimed that a change of sex in civil status does not prevent medically assisted procreation.